So when I arrived in the physics department in 2012, Danny just at first seemed to be another one of those people who we'd meet in the first week, pretend to remember his name, and then never engage with again for the next 4 years. Someone who'd been in the department for longer than I'd been alive, and, sorry, I don't mean to make you feel old, but someone who we'd probably never have to bother interacting with or speaking to again. And that view really didn't last probably more than a few days for a lot of us. Coming to university for the first time, for a lot of the students, it was the first time they'd ever lived away from home, and being put into a stressful and intense environment often created issues for them, whether it be being stressed or being worried about being away from home. And being able to go and speak to Danny about that, I think for all of the students, really is what made them able to carry on through those difficulties. Whether it be talking about stress, which, students don't necessarily want to talk about it because everyone gets stressed, right? But Danny had a way of making that problem seem like it mattered to him and coming up with a solution for it. And to some students, when we asked if the student body at large, all 900 of them, had anything they'd like us to talk about today, a few things came through. And I remember one particularly, actually. For some reason, I'd had Danny's number, and a student messaged me to say that, it had all got too much for them, and that was it, they were done. And so I called up Danny at about 8 o'clock on a Sunday evening, I think, and I think Helen answered the phone. I said, "Hello, could I speak to Danny, please?" And he came on. And I said, "Danny, we've got this really serious problem, what do I do?" And it was absolutely incredible, the fact that he managed to deal with it. And because of his intervention in that situation, that student is still alive today. So it's really not going too far to say that Danny really was a lifesaver to some of us. The respect that he garnered from the students was really something that I think few other people in the department can match. He was funny, which in a role as serious and perhaps at times as sort of depressing as his, is a really important thing. And I think that showed in his inaugural lecture, where it was absolutely packed. And, most undergraduates will avoid lectures like the plague, especially if they're after 5 p.m. But we felt we owed it to him to come along and give him a shout. And I think perhaps what will always stick with me about Danny is some of the funnier interactions that we had. I'd ask you, keep them to yourselves, because they involve various breaches of college policy that we committed, possibly breaches of the law, but we don't really talk about that too much. So in my first year, myself and some of the other students were, shall we say, not particularly well behaved. I'm sure some of the staff in the department think we're still not particularly well behaved. But one thing that happened is we decided to have some wheelie chair races down the corridor on level 3. Now, you might have noticed it's flat and shiny and is the ideal size for getting 2 wheelie chairs down at high speed, whilst one person sits on them and the other person is pushing. So I remember we did that, and we got caught by Danny and hastily abandoned the wheelie chairs outside his office and legged it away. Obviously, we were awaiting some sort of angry email asking us exactly what we thought we were up to, causing such disruption on level 3 in the middle of the day. But the thing that I actually took away from my relationship with Danny was an email I got a few days later telling me that someone had abandoned a wheelie chair outside his office that was looking rather homeless and sad, and would I possibly repatriate it, please? And that wasn't the only thing. So some of you might know we have faculties here. So the scientists have their own mascot, thermometer. The engineers have a giant spanner. And the medics have a costume of a phoenix. I'm not really sure what the symbolism is there, but anyway. And one of the traditions is to try and steal these mascots off each other. So in my first year, we bravely went over to Charing Cross Hospital and broke in, entered the security office, uninvited, and asked the guard nicely if he could let us into the student room office, and he did. And so we had this giant mascot of a bird, this big yellow chicken. And we stole it, and that was great because it meant, they had to pay us to get it back. And we arrived back on campus, and we realized we don't really have anywhere to put this giant chicken. So I showed up at Danny's office at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, and I said, "Danny, would you mind if we left something in your office?" And he said, "Oh, no, probably can manage that." And I said, "What is it?" And I was like, "Oh, well, it's a giant chicken costume." how on earth did you get your hands on that? I think the question came down to, is it stolen goods? To which, unfortunately, I had to answer yes, and he forced us to move it on. But the humour with which he treated that situation, and indeed the fact that he went out of his way to make us able to have fun in the department, was really something that didn't go amiss. And we always like, as all students do, to have cheap alcohol at our parties. And in my second year, the edict came down from the college that we were only to have alcohol that was bought through college catering at our parties. I'm not sure if any of you have ever tasted the Imperial college-branded wine, but it is truly disgusting. So in his role as senior tutor, Danny became the unofficial department student alcohol buyer. And we had to find some way to get this very, very large volume of alcohol for our leaders' party into the department, hidden so that no members of staff from the union or security or college catering would notice, and then take it up to the level 8 common room for our party. So there was a period of time with which I'm sure Danny perhaps didn't see so many people in his office at that time, because it was absolutely full of, shall we call, illegally sourced alcohol that had been brought in simply for the purposes of making this party happen. It is quite hard perhaps to convey how much that meant to us, the fact he was willing to put his neck on the line just so that we could have a good time. I don't think it'd be going too far to say he was probably the student's favourite member of staff, and is the reason that a lot of us carried on and actually were able to get through to the end of our degrees. It does mean a lot, and I think the students, us as our undergraduates, will move through the rest of our careers remembering Danny as someone who seemed to somehow have the energy and the time and the capability to be a friend to everyone, to be a mentor to the people who needed it, and perhaps most of all and most simply, I think, just a good man. Thank you.